Once upon a time there were two little girls named Deb. One little girl grew up to be a preacher while the other grew up to be a pagan, and they both grew up to be the very best of friends. Join the preacher and the pagan as they take a fresh look at Christianity, from the inside out and the outside in.
Hello and welcome to The Preacher and the Pagan. I'm Deb in Arizona, USA. And hello, Deb Sutter. Where are you?
Hey, I'm in Ontario that is finally cooling
Oh,
off.
thank God. Well, we have like another month or so before it becomes habitable here in Arizona, but I'm loving that for you, my friend.
Mm. Yeah, me too. Camping season, no mosquitoes. It's a great thing.
It's all a good thing, yes. The mosquitoes don't come here to Arizona, they die of thirst. So that's one good thing. But then again, they probably get fried by the time they even showed up. So you're going camping? You got the camping thing happening?
Oh yeah, well it's my Girl Guide involvement. September starts and I've got all sorts of camping obligations and getting the girls out into nature, especially city kids that don't necessarily experience a lot of what uh, I would have grown up with in rural Maritimes.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm the worst pagan ever because I know we're all about the nature and the environment and all that stuff, but I'm a city girl at heart. I love nature. I want to protect nature. I want to protect the environment. I just don't want to be out in it if I don't have to be, you know?
Yeah, well, and but the whole ecology and environment conversation, it's got so many asterisks and conditions and just let us go, whatever. I remember preaching one time about uh, uh, in the Gospels as well as the Didache, which is the first publication that tells it's the how-to of how you go about being a missionary. It talks about don't take extra cloaks, don't take this, don't take that, just rely on what's going. I said, that's great in the Middle East in summertime, but we live in North America through winter. And getting rid oh no, it wasn't that one. It was get rid of all your extra stuff. And it's like, yeah, that's really fine. But in July, you can't be getting rid of your parka because you're going to need it in 6 months.
Exactly.
So a little bit of pragmatic stuff. And I mean, in Arizona, like you need your air conditioning. So how do
You
you,
think that air conditioning's going off? You're out of your freaking mind. I am
right?
using that air
So
conditioning in the summer.
how do you make that a spiritual and ecologically friendly choice
And
when it's still absolutely necessary for the physical survival of
exactly.
folks?
And the whole ecological thing, and I'm like I said, I really I do care about the environment. I think most people do because they live in it. I know we've had the hottest summer on record here, and it's just it's hard to ignore. And even when you get our age, well, my age, and you don't have too many decades left to worry about it, you still have to look at the future. And um it's overwhelming. I'm looking on eco pagan sites and resilience.org and all of these places, and there's so much that needs to be done, and it can be overwhelming and put you almost in a situation of shutdown,
Yeah, yeah.
where now people who know me and know my short attention span are usually stunned to find out that I haven't eaten beef, pork, or chicken since 1999.
Hmm.
That's 25 years. And they're like, you can't even finish a sentence. How do you maintain that level of pescatarianism, flexitarianism, whatever you want to call it? How do you maintain that for so long? And I tell them every day I have a choice. What am I choosing to do?
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to turn off my air conditioner, but I'm also not going to eat beef that's going to contribute to an industry that's helping to destroy the environment. I'm not going to wear clothes that are, supporting cruelty to animals. Like, I'm not going to, I'm going to work, do everything I can within the scope of my ability to make it better. And
And
I think if everybody kind of got to that point where what you can do, abso-freaking-lutely do, and don't
yeah.
judge people if they don't have the ability to do as much as you do, then
But I
we'll
think
get
the
over the,
environment also,
yeah,
just where you live, because you
yeah,
mentioned clothing and products that doesn't harm animals. Well, I'm up here in a nation that is still heavily dependent on the use of animals for food, for clothing, for livelihood.
yeah,
And do you remember? I mean, it wasn't a lifetime, so you'd remember when I think it was Bridget Bardot had this huge thing about those poor baby seals, the seal
yeah.
hunt, and
Mhm.
and well, the end results of that is that the seals were allowed to multiply. They decimated the cod fishery and the cod stocks on the
Yeah.
East Coast. Then, because they were starving, they were diseased. So they have now a diseased population. An entire group of villages are no longer able to provide for themselves, all because one actress got it in her head and did not do the work, did not
Yes.
do the research.
Yes.
And that's the part that we cannot step over. It's really easy. Like everybody's was going on and on about the straws for the longest time. And the
Mm.
disabled community was saying, wait a minute, we need plastic straws because some of us have swallowing issues.
And
And that voice was not even heard.
and the thing is, there are so many
Reactionary.
ways around it. We in our house, we had that same thing. We need straws, both of us, Catherine and I. But we have metal straws. We buy metal straws that can be washed. We keep them in the house. We have some that if we need to go out, we can bring them with us.
Yeah.
They're very portable. They're cheap as hell. And they last forever. They come even with these little brushes you can clean them out with.
Mhm.
It's not rocket surgery. It just takes a little bit of creative thinking
Well, and I think
and the
that's
willingness to make a small change where you can.
part of it, I think, is that people do not want to deal with inconvenience.
Mhm.
And I mean, I bought my kids silicone straws forever and ever ago, and every St. Nicholas, they've got something reusable in their stocking. Um, I don't know if they use them or not. I know that one my kid lost hers promptly after she received it. Um, but you're right. When you say it's a choice every day, it's a choice like where am I going to put my money? Um, where am I going to make this choice? How am I going to be a voice today? But personal responsibility is actually a small part of the equation. It's social pressure on oil companies
Oh,
and
yeah.
government and everybody else. I mean, wasn't that long ago that we were talking about actually we come up numerous times, the right-wing cohort that wants to control society. And so one of the real fun things that some of them are into, especially those who are trying to force their version of Christianity on everybody, is that this group of them that believes in dominism. So dominism essentially says that God will control the earth. Any effort we make to make the earth better is against God in their thinking. And they think that we should do what we can to encourage the destruction of the world as we know it for humans right now because it's going to bring the second coming faster. These are sane people who pay taxes. Well, maybe not to pay taxes, but they vote. They are completely committed to doing everything they can to not clean up or not help the environment. And these folks are in offices and corporations, boardrooms, and that's what's driving them. They're not the least bit concerned. People tell them that you're destroying the world. They're saying, "Yep, that's the plan."
And
That is scary to me.
that is a subset of it, but you can't underplay the role of greed and short-sightedness.
Oh, no, not at all. But the
No.
thing is that we're first and foremost a couple of women talking about our spirituality as a sounding board, and that is some of the evil of how my tradition anyway is being manipulated and twisted into keeping the world precariously placed as far as the environment goes.
And my faith is, God bless, being used as a media example of how horrible ecologists are, because they're so fervent and they're unrealistic, and they want to change everything overnight, and they don't care about any practicality. None of which, I mean, some of it's true, some of it's
Oh.
true, but again, as in all of it, the extremes are tiny portions of the majority of us, and the
Who
majority of
are
us are not being listened to, and our voices are not being heard.
precisely, yeah. It very much is who's holding the mic.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously in a great many pagan denominations, ecology, connection to nature, connection to the land and sea and sky, and all of that is very, very prominent in our faith. So it kind of does inform our political beliefs on climate. Um, as far as I understand from my experience of Christianity, I grew up Catholic. We were put on this planet, at least according to the Bible that I was taught, to be stewards of the earth.
Yes.
So where these people go from, you are stewards of the earth, to destroy it so I can come and cause the apocalypse. Again, I don't understand the
Well,
the mental gymnastics used to get there.
I can't say as I understand it, but I know it.
Yeah. And
So, first of all, it goes back to the King James Version of the Bible.
that guy should have
And
stuck to something else.
you know what?
Why the
He's
hell?
actually innocent in this. He's just a name thrown on there so they had stop killing each other. King
Yeah.
James gets a pass on this.
Okay, okay.
The translators used the word dominion, which was not a good. You're correct. It's stewardship was what we're taught, but they used the word dominion, which means control over. So that
Mm-hmm.
has informed a great many people as far as our control over the earth. But as far as these folks who want to see in the end of time, that's straight up revelation. And what a lot of people don't understand is Revelation was written as a counter to a lot of the social progressive stuff that was going on with the earliest Christ followers that John of Patmos thought strayed too far away from his understanding of a purified Hebrew culture. He wrote about all these visions and all these seals and all this symbolism, and it is a whole lot of symbolism based on his world in Roman occupied Palestine. Unfortunately, every generation that considers themselves in modernity thinks the Bible is written for their reality and not necessarily a historic reality that may not translate into the reality we're living today. So that essentially feeds into a lot of these modern day dominists who are wanting to see the end of the world, and a lot of churches who think we don't have to step up to the plate or it's too inconvenient to do any of that because the problem is just too big. And then there's a whole other cohort of people that think, well, God is like a superhero going to come in and fix it, which was never part of Jesus theology ever. So there's a whole lot of moving parts in this, and when you've got that many moving parts and ideologies, it's really easy as the people who have to do some lifestyle changes to not do that because it's hard. Like it's rough. You mentioned being a pescatarian or vegetarian. I was vegan for a very, very long time, but after a while, physically it wasn't enough for me anymore. I wasn't getting what I needed, so I had to go back. So does that make me a bad environmentalist? Well, according to some people, yes. According to other people, no. So where do you look for the right level of enlightenment?
Well, and that's the thing. Who is the enlightenment judge here?
Yeah.
But my path to being a veg, I was first a lacto-ovo vegetarian, and then I had to switch to pescatarianism because I just couldn't do it. Um, and but I really put a lot of thought into how I was going to be a vegetarian, and I realized that I don't have a problem with anybody eating meat. I don't care. I'm not going to judge you. I'm not the food police. It ain't my damn business what you put in your mouth, food or otherwise. It's just not my opinion. It's not my business. But I realized that, I want to be aware of what I'm eating. And I could not go out and kill a cow. I couldn't kill a chicken, even though I think they are evil little beasts and rude and mean. And I grew up around them and they are evil. I couldn't kill a chicken. I couldn't kill any kind of land animal. I grew up fishing. I grew up shrimping and crabbing and doing all that stuff on the ocean. I knew what was involved in capturing, killing, and preparing those meats. So I knew what was involved. I wasn't just blindly consuming something.
Mm.
And I figured as long as I had a choice, and every day I have a choice, if I can choose to eat something plant-based or something that doesn't involve, if I couldn't go out and kill it myself, I probably am not going to be the one that I'm not going to eat it. But I'm going to tell you right now, if the apocalypse came, I'm eating whatever I can find because there's no choice left.
Precisely. Yeah. And that's why humans are omnivores. Yeah. For me, I raised my kids vegan, but again, it was an economic choice. It was bloody expensive to have meat for six
Yes.
people.
Oh,
And with dairy allergies in our household, it was not even possible to really be vegetarian. So we went full on vegan. And my kids this day have a really good sense of how nutrition works because we talked about it over and over again. And they know when they're making bad decisions, but again, it's their choice. They've got that information. But what they're really struggling with is how do you make choices in an economic environment that doesn't give you choice?
well, and that's where activism has to come in because the choices are there. They are not economical because it does not serve the purposes of the people providing those services to make those changes because they can make more profit on things that aren't as ecologically sound.
Oh
And
yeah. And you and I've lived long enough to see some products that used to cost an arm and a leg, and now they're no-name brands at the local grocery store.
Yeah. And I'll be honest with you. I started when I first started in 1999, there was no such thing as a plant-based industry.
No.
It is a little bit more expensive than the regular stuff, but it's worth it to me because I know that I don't have to kill animals. It's just a couple of extra dollars or a grocery bill to have these products that, and I'm helping. But the thing is, not everyone is as fortunate as I am financially. And
Yeah.
people who can't, and I'm not going to judge you for
Yeah.
taking what you can find and living that way. The thing is that we're the people who want clean water and clean air and temperatures that don't kill you when you walk outside in the summer. They outnumber the people who are profiting from keeping this planet on a downward spiral. And if we put enough pressure on them, then they're gonna have to make changes, and we can make
Yes.
changes too.
And you're right about collectivists, but I was also thinking about the economics. I remember, oh heavens, being at a summit years ago, decades ago now probably, and I remember some women from Africa, I believe, getting really, really angry, and I didn't understand because what we were talking about was good stuff. And finally, they let go with that anger, and they said, "Look, all of this stuff is always coming from the West. You made your money, and now you're telling us we can't make ours. All of these changes you're trying to force on, and it gave me a really interesting perspective because again, a lot of ecofeminism, a lot of ecological stuff is the privileged classes with
Yes.
choice trying to dictate to those who don't have choice or feel they don't have
Yeah.
choice.
And
And
these
how do we get over that barrier? Because every time there's a social issue, that is a divide.
and these third, these TikTok influencers and social media influencers who can afford their $45 cups
Yeah.
and their prepackaged organics. It's like it's not realistic to the majority of people out there. And this
Oh.
blindness, it's very, very, it puts people off, and it gets an us versus them
Yeah.
attitude where
And if
that
you're
should
a kid
never
being
even be in the
raised,
picture.
if you're a kid being raised in a single parent household or a single income household, you're looking at that stuff and like, what the heck do you know about life? Why should I
Exactly.
be bothered with your fantasy version of reality? That might be good for you, but that's not something the rest of us can even begin to experience.
And
How
that's
do we start to balance that out?
and that's where I come from. I mean, I grew up in a wealthy family. I'm white. I am middle class. I am educated. I am that privileged class. I know this.
Mhm.
And it's not my place to tell people who are struggling to survive, oh, you have to do without, or you have to. No, it's the what we have to do, and especially those of us who are on, and I know your situation. Privilege is such a, how do I put this? It's a flexible term.
It very
Uh,
much.
but we have to open our mouths, we have to open ourselves up and listen to other people.
Yeah.
We can't just assume we're knowing what's right.
No, no. And that comes out in many ways. There was a number of years ago, I was volunteering at a food bank, and it was around Thanksgiving, which for us is October. And I was looking at these cans of pumpkin puree that were
Oh
coming in,
God.
donations. And I was talking with the person who was in charge of the food bank, and I said, "Do you ever offer recipes?" And she got huffy with me. We can't force our values on someone else. And I'm thinking, it's not forcing values. It's there's a whole lot of useless food right here on the counter. Let's come up with some creative ways that people have better access to it. A couple of curry
Man,
recipes is not going to kill you too much. And then they'll be able to use this pumpkin puree because
oh my God, a
majority of
pumpkin is
people at
so
food bank, I
versatile.
promise you, they're not going to be making pumpkin pie.
Oh my God, we use pumpkin, savory pumpkin, spaghetti, pasta, soups. I mean, there's so much stuff you can use for it that has nothing to do with sweet. And you're
Yeah,
right, just being able to use what you have in a creative way, so you don't have to live a horrible life just
yeah,
because you don't have a lot of money.
yeah.
And
And that's even before you talk about people who are immigrants to the culture that have never experienced this food before, and suddenly this is what they're being shown that they have available to them. Like, what the heck do you do with this?
exactly. And it's again, it comes down to what we always say is, we can't, if we want to be effective leaders and change, and we want to affect some kind of change, we can't just be myopic about it.
Yeah.
And some of these people from so-called third world countries, they're doing stuff that is so freaking innovative and so
Hmm.
brilliant. And if we could take some of their ideas and incorporate them here in America, or in Canada, or in the West,
Yeah.
what could we do? I mean, people taking these plastic bottles and turning them into indoor lighting,
Yeah. I know. Yeah.
using waste products to make roads, to make houses.
Hmm.
And they're doing it out of necessity, whereas we can't be bothered to even put an extra recycling receptacle out by the dumpsters at our business, I mean at our complex.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've
So
met.
the arrogance of thinking that we know what's best, when people out there in these so-called developing companies are running running us ragged with their innovation.
Hmm. Or people today thinking I'm just one person. What does it matter if I throw this in the garbage rather than the recycling bin?
Yeah,
Enough of those, and it makes a big difference.
it does. I mean, it is personal responsibility. And like you
Hmm.
said, that is a very small part of it. But also the fact that a
It's the
lot of
part we can
consider,
own.
huh,
It's the part we can own, though.
right. And the part where activism comes in is that there are solutions. There are solutions. We could clean up the ocean, we could clean up the world easily if we could get past the roadblocks that are there,
Yep.
because the technology is out there. All it takes is an investment of time and money and faith.
Yep. Yeah. I actually remember reading an ecologist number of years ago. He said, when I started in this field, I was absolutely convinced science would solve the problem. He said, now that I've worked in this field for a few decades, I realize this is not a science problem. This is a spiritual problem.
It's never been a science problem
I
because
know,
this
but
technology, yeah.
for a scientist to state it right out front at a conference, I believe he spoke,
Hmm. Yeah.
it comes back again to those of us who are spiritually inclined, or use our sense of spirituality for how we interpret the world. We're basically have the ball tossed back into our lap. It's not
Yeah.
something we can move to some other category.
It's like everything else we ever talk about. We're letting a very small vocal minority control us, where the majority of us want something completely different. And if we just opened our mouths and maybe just dug in a little and got out there, hell, just freaking vote already. And
Yeah.
I feel really terrible because the last primary, I always vote early because we can't actually go physically vote. And I was crushed. This is the first primary because of having been sick all of last July. I wasn't able to mail my ballots out early, and I got the date of the primary wrong. And I
Mm.
was literally 30 minutes too late to drop off my ballot. And it
Oh,
was
gee.
the first primary I missed in 40 years.
Mm.
And I was devastated.
Yeah,
But
that bites.
that really did bite. But I mean, it was the primary. I mean, most of the people I was voting for were running unopposed anyway. So it's not really that, it's just the principle of the matter.
Oh, well, I totally get that. And where I live, the same party has dominated here for about 70 years. So whether I vote or not is in some ways insignificant, but in other ways it's the principle. You're and the demonstration for the younger generation to get up and do something.
One person voting doesn't matter. But if 1,000 people don't vote,
Yeah.
and that can topple an election.
Yeah.
If one person chooses not to recycle, that's not going to make a difference. But if 1,000 people choose to not to recycle, cumulatively, that makes a huge difference.
And that's what we're seeing.
And the
We are
thing
seeing
is,
those numbers who are opting out.
so one person deciding to do something good, you may not think that you're doing that much good. But if you can talk and inspire other people, and enough of us do the right
Mm.
thing, we can move mountains. It's a say it, just as in the negative, the positive also. I don't remember what how you're maybe like 5 years younger than me. Um, Fluorocarbons were a big thing.
Oh, the
The
hairspray.
ozone layer. The
Yep.
ozone layer was being depleted, and enough people got together and bitched about it that now the ozone layer has been restored.
Yep. Faster than we were predicted too.
Right. And that was the thing. We thought it was irreversible. It
Yep.
wasn't. Enough people got together.
Yep. My dad was a biologist and a botanist, and he used to say that the earth can heal itself. Humans just have to get out of the way.
Well, look what happened during COVID. They
Yeah.
started seeing all sorts. It doesn't take much, guys. And it's part of your faith. It's part of my faith. It's
Mhm.
part of what we're called to do. It's not just treat people better. It's treat the planet better. It's treat our brains better, treat our hearts better.
We'll be thoughtful consumers too.
Right.
We live in capitalism doesn't mean that we have to be dominated by capitalism.
And I get so frustrated. One thing that I do have a frustrating problem with some people is that they're like, boycotts don't work. They don't care if you don't go there. I don't care at all whether it affects, I'm going to say it because I got to say it. I don't care if my never spending a penny at Chick-fil-A hurts that company, but I know that I'm not spending a bit of my hard-earned money on a company that promotes homophobia and
Yep.
promotes horrible anti-gay legislation. If I
Mhm.
don't shop at these places that actually contribute to causes I don't believe in, I may not make a big ripple in the water on their end, but I know on my end, I
Yeah.
feel better. I know that I'm not contributing to the problem.
Yes.
Not
And that's as much
financially,
as,
not support, emotionally, not socially,
yeah.
not culturally.
And I think that's part of the discussion folks have to have. It's not just activism, it's reactivism as well. What we react to, what we choose to ignore is also, or walk away from is also part of the issue. Like you and I had a conversation not that long ago about how I was walking here in extreme heat, which partially stupid, but part of it is that I want a lifestyle where I am not dependent on gas powered machines. It's a lifestyle I'm actively trying to pursue. I live in a city. I can sort of do it, sort of can't. Um, but it's a choice that I make to become sweaty, as it turned out,
And
rather than the convenience of getting on and off something that is going to damage the environment in different ways. I can handle the heat.
and on the opposite end, um, the city of Phoenix is 72 miles long, east
Yes.
coast end to end.
Yeah,
And the nearest grocery is more than
precisely. Yeah.
it's not doable.
Exactly. And that's the upside and the downside of
But
cities.
there are other things you can do.
Yep.
The trick is, if you want to live that part of your faith, if you want to live the part of your faith that says be a good steward of the earth, whether you're Christian, whether you're pagan, no matter what religion you are, make the choices you can make and
Yeah.
make them firmly, and
Yeah.
don't be ashamed that you can't make every choice that needs to be made, and don't make other people feel ashamed that they can't match your level.
No.
Just,
And do not fall into the trap of there's some version of perfection. It does not exist.
oh, good God, no. I wish perfection, it just doesn't, that word should be just struck from the English language. It doesn't exist. It's a myth. It's like,
Yep. Well, how
I
we interpret it in modernity anyway.
yeah.
What it
So
used to mean is not what we use it for now.
we were talking in a previous episode about secularism,
Mm.
and it's people will look at the environmental issue and say, oh, well, that's a secular problem. No,
No.
it's a human problem. You can't break that down into religion or secularism. It is a life problem. We are living beings on a planet, and we need a certain set of environmental conditions to live and thrive. And regardless of what your politics are, you are not going to avoid the fact that you need clean air, water, a livable temperature.
Yep.
It's not going to happen. I don't care how much money you have. If there's no clean water, you're going to die. Bye. Done.
Yep.
So,
Yep. Not taking it with you.
and if even if you don't believe in all of that, don't take the rest of us with you. Yep.
No. That goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning about dominism and the belief that we need to increase the destruction, not reduce it.
That just
There's a lot of versions of
oh,
dominism, only some of it claims itself as a religious base.
Oh my God. And that's the thing. This whole let it burn thing, it just blows my mind.
Yeah.
Talk about short-sightedness. I mean, and you're
Oh, yeah.
banking on an interpretation of a book that was written 2,000 years ago, several languages ago, several revisions ago, and
Mm-hmm.
you're probably still misinterpreting the version that you have.
Oh, yeah. The version that they wanted destroyed was the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire was not everything, but it was to them.
And you know what? When the Roman Empire did get destroyed, it was really, really bad for a while.
A while. Yep. And then they picked up the pieces, like every civilization before them that had ever died, and got on with living.
But if you take the Roman Empire and translate that to the sustainability and livability of an entire planet,
Yep.
the planet will bounce back. I'm not worried about saving Earth. Earth is going to survive one way or another. It may be an uninhabitable rock, but it'll survive
Mm-hmm.
until all things go away as they are wont to do. But that doesn't mean the human race will be able to live here.
Nope. And
And
I
we don't
really
have
would
a
like
planet B.
I'd really like my future great grandbabies to have something worthwhile.
I'd like your future great grandbabies to have something worthwhile too. I bet your future great grandbabies are going to be awesome. They're going to be like Generation Negative Z, right?
Something like that.
I love it. Oh my God. How did we get through this episode so fast?
I don't know.
I
I don't
love
know.
it. Look at us. We're about the 2 minute mark now.
Yep.
Okay. In your wise ability, what would be the one thing you would recommend to people to do to
Oh, you know what?
incorporate this into their faith?
Oh, lots of the one thing. The one thing. Um, talk. Talk to each other. Talk, share your faith, your prayers, your perspective, your concerns, your experience, but just talk and listen. Talk and listen and see where you can make some connections and where you can mature in your understanding, where you can contribute to other people's maturing and yeah, keep the conversation going because the biggest weapon that the folks have is keeping us isolated and scared.
Uh,
So overcoming that means we have to talk about everything and everything.
okay. And my recommendation would be to learn.
Mm,
Um, learn about what's going on, learn about what you can do that is within your means because it's very overwhelming and you don't have to go 100% to one direction to make a positive change in your life and in your area. And if enough of us do this, then we can start moving the needle towards something a little bit better for ourselves and for future generations.
sounds good.
Look at us. Okay,
Yeah,
my friend. I think we're at the end of yet another episode. I
we
love this.
are.
I love talking to you. You're so awesome.
Oh, I was thinking the same thing about you, but we got to wrap this up, love. So
All
I am
right.
Deb from Canada.
I'm Deb from Arizona, USA, and you are listening to The Preacher and the Pagan. Um, barefootevangelist.ca. We're on YouTube. We're all over the place. Look us up. Okay. Thank you. Talk to you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to The Preacher and the Pagan with Deborah Suddard and Deborah Bodwin. This podcast is a two-lady podcast production in conjunction with the Barefoot Evangelist. Our producer and sound editor is Catherine Gordon. Our theme music was composed by Deborah Bodwin. You can reach us at thepreacherandthepagan@gmail.com or by visiting our website at barefootevangelist.ca/podcast.